Good morning and welcome to Friday of Idea Fest. My name is Jonathan Fritz and I'm excited to kick off and moderate this session. Unless you're working in digital health or biotech, you may not realize what has been built up here in Wisconsin, combining world-class research institutions, growing and influential companies like Exact Sciences and Epic, and talented entrepreneurs and investors. What we're seeing is Wisconsin health catalyzed, and that's the topic of our discussion today. Before I introduce our esteemed panel and have each of them say a few words, I'd like to provide some context for why I'm excited about this topic. I'm Jonathan Fritz, and I'm a partner at HealthX Ventures. We're an early stage digital health focused venture capital fund. We've invested in 26 companies, about half of which are in Wisconsin. And we actively look for talented entrepreneurs that are positively improving and changing healthcare for the better. Partnered with Exact Sciences, we're excited to bring this session to you. I'm also passionate about the state, born and raised Wisconsinite. I've served on the Wisconsin Technology Council Board of Directors for a decade, the investment committee of Brightstar for 7 years, and a judge for the Wisconsin Governor's Business Plan Contest for 18 years. The Tech Council advises the governor and legislature on tech, business, entrepreneurship. Brightstar is an economic development focused investment fund that is aligned with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. A few logistics. We are going to have a session for about an hour. During the discussion, please feel free to submit any questions that you might have in the comments section. I'll ask our panelists those questions towards the end. We should have about 15 minutes or so for Q&A. Now to our panelists. We have Sarah, Jason, and Rock. Sarah Condella is the EVP of Human Resources at Exact Sciences. Jason Fields is the CEO of Madison Region Economic Partnership. And a great friend of mine, Rock Mackey, is the chairman of the board and chief innovation officer at Leo Cancer Care, as well as a longtime professor from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I'd like to start off with Sarah and go to Jason and Rock. Please give us your background and your thoughts on Wisconsin as a biotech and digital health hotbed.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. As Jonathan said, I'm Sarah Condella with Exact Sciences. I've been with Exact Sciences for the last 10 years and have really gotten to see firsthand, I believe, the growth and just the momentum that is behind Wisconsin and this area being a biotech hub, and really have gotten to play a role in bringing talent here and hoping to help the area thrive. I'm also born and raised in Wisconsin, and my husband and I are both Wisconsin Badgers, so I'm a little biased in loving this area.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you all. Good to be on the panel. I don't know how esteemed I am, Jonathan, but Jason Fields, President and CEO of Madison Region Economic Partnership, former Wisconsin state legislator. Then I had enough sense to get out of Dodge and convinced a few people that I kind of knew what I was doing, and so now I'm here. Former stockbroker and portfolio manager into really entrepreneurship and innovation. And so MadRep, particularly our focus is what we call holistic economic development approach to economic development, which is new business attraction, business retention and expansion, community development, workforce development, and really consistently trying to ask and answer the question, is our region a great place to live, work, and play? And so what I see here, and I'm a native of Milwaukee who's a transplant to Madison, what I love is, and I always describe it this way, I felt like I was joining the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Like I felt like I was joining an all-star team in a region of people who were really serious about being innovative. And so I think that the future is ours to rule. And I think with the current money that's coming down the pipeline, if we play our cards right, we can continue to be a leader and set the pace globally. So very excited about talking about this. And shout out to HealthX Ventures and Exact Sciences for putting this on.
Rock?
Rock Mackey. I was a professor at the University of Wisconsin for more than 25 years. I've lived in Madison more than half my life. I'm a serial entrepreneur, both when I was a professor and after I retired as a professor. Currently, I'm at Leo Cancer Care, half-time position as the Chief Innovation Officer, chairman of the board. But I'm also on the board of several companies. Probably the most prominent one is Shine Medical Technologies.
Great. Thank you all. So why don't we talk a little bit about the ripple effect and the impact that some prominent companies have had on Wisconsin. Exact Sciences, where Sarah is, and Epic have had pretty significant economic impact on Madison and the state overall. So I'm going to ask Jason to start off with and give us your thoughts on kind of the ripple effect that having these type of organizations and others, what does that really do for our region?
Sure, I get off the mute there. It does a couple of things. And when I talk about us, and I'll say this from a Madison or MadRep region or our what it is in our job focus area. What it does is it helps us to answer that question: are we a great place to live, work, and play? When young talent or innovative talent sees the kind of workplaces in the capital city with as many benefits and amenities as Madison, when they see the innovation, the technology, when they see other young people being attracted to companies that are helping save lives and doing things that are important for the future, it just becomes almost a calling card for the world globally to say, hey, if there's a place you want to work and enjoy living in the number one spot, this is it. Not only are we innovative, but we have the amenities and the culture and the climate to foster well-being. And so when you look and see what those guys are doing at Epic, Kevin Conroy, at Exact Sciences, Kevin's job, what he's doing, what Sarah and those people are doing there, it really just becomes a story to tell globally and internationally to attract tier one talent.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Rock, you've been a serial entrepreneur. You've seen the Madison region and Wisconsin, change over time. You were the founder of Tomotherapy. Can you give your thoughts on the ripple effect of having companies like this in Wisconsin? Rock, you're on mute.
We have ripple effects from large companies as well in Wisconsin. So GE Medical is a good example. So the medical device industry in Wisconsin is greatly helped by that. I mean, the imaging sector alone is about $40 billion nationally, and I would say about a quarter of that is in Waukesha County. And of course, Waukesha County then has all kinds of folks that build things for GE Medical, and the entire medical device industry in the state then is also using those supply companies. And so, for example, radiotherapy is probably on the order of a $4 billion a year U.S. and Dane County, because of Accuray, formerly Tomotherapy, is about $250 million to the economy. So on the order of 5 or 6% of the national economy. So, but yeah, it's clearly big companies attract or spin out small companies because of executives leaving, and you then get clusters of industries. So clearly, the biotech medical device industry is certainly helped by big companies.
Great. Thank you, Rock. So Sarah, if you can give us your thoughts generally, but then also focus in on the impact it's had to access to talent generally, and then also specifically at Exact Sciences.
Sure. Well, I think broadly the impact, I think bringing more people here obviously puts more into those amenities that Jason talked about, which help us really attract the best talent and retain the talent to the region. Obviously, we want to bring people in who want to stay, and will continue to grow and thrive in this area and in our companies. And so seeing the impact that it has on the education system, the training programs that become available for employees, the continued access to different benefits, and even just the growth from a housing perspective that obviously helps keep this a really competitive space to have talent. For Exact Sciences specifically, we love having access to talent that's being attracted here, whether it's for our company or others. And while I do think we have we've built name recognition over time, that creates a healthy competitive talent environment, which I think is another thing that allows people to stay in the region and bring those skills and keep those skills here.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So one example that is close to HealthX and ties into Epic is actually the foundation of HealthX Ventures. So my partner Mark Bakken was the founder of Nordic, and Nordic Consulting is the largest Epic consulting company in the world. And he had formed that in 2010, seeing an opportunity where Epic wasn't providing or wanted to provide necessarily consulting services to health systems. And so in 4 years, he had built that company from 0 to 140 million in revenue, ended up attracting venture capital from Kaiser Permanente, big health system on the West Coast, and then some private equity. And then he formed HealthX in 2015. We've been able to invest in 26 companies, which has had then a continuing ripple effect. 2 of them are now worth over $1 billion. And so that sort of, almost like helping identify and see the value that can be created from entrepreneurship, the wealth creation that comes to then creating new businesses to then provide jobs to more people in the region. And that just kind of keeps on building upon itself. And then also just those that have been through it being, business advisors. Rock, you have advised and started so many different companies, but I think that's a component that can't really be undertold, if you will. So maybe Rock, can you talk a little bit about kind of the benefit of having advisors and business folks that have been through it, and then kind of the wealth creation and how that then helps create jobs, how that then spurs further economic development?
There's no question that getting access to managers that are willing to spend their time talking to young entrepreneurs is a wonderful thing. We have incubators in town, nationally recognized incubators. G-Beta actually is a spinoff that works mainly with local folks. But Generator, its parent, is a national incubator. I think they're probably labeled in the top 5 or 10. But we have all kinds of community organizations. Of course, the University of Wisconsin is a tremendous force in Madison, Dane County. They have programs for their students, of course, their faculty, but they also do a lot of things for the general public. WARF, the Tech Transfer Agency, has seminars often. But of course, the community as a whole, has tremendous opportunities. The Bio Forward, the Tech Council, even the Chamber of Commerce do things to help train entrepreneurs. We have Wisconsin Investment Partners, which is about 120 angel investors. Are a tremendous way for one to learn about investment if you join that group, and it's not very expensive. So I think it's a tremendous ecosystem we've had. It's been growing steadily for the last 25 years, and I see it's going to be growing more.
Great, thank you, Rock. So Jason, you've been an elected official, been part of the state, for quite some time, and now in your role at MadRep. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts of other organizations and other sort of individuals or organizations that are having a positive impact on the region for biotech, medical device, digital health, and others?
Yeah, I think one, as a legislator, you sometimes you were a little bit removed, and so I offer this. I think to the degree that we continue to talk about our ecosystem and how good it is to the legislature, then they will start to see that we have huge assets here. All the companies that Rock Mackey mentioned, of course, Exact and HealthX, all these places, I believe, are doing great things. And the real great thing about it is when you look at Lisa Johnson, what she's doing, Zach Brandon, what he's doing, the chamber, for example. I think where we're going is that everybody is starting to get to a point where we know we need to work together to continue to make this a #1 region, right? Particularly if we want to compete on an international scale. So what we've been doing is going around to our 8 counties saying, listen, it's not a Madison versus a Greene, or it's us versus Boston, us versus North Carolina. And so to the degree that we can all work together and compete with those places, and I think we're getting there. I think there's still some work to be done, but we have all the assets, we have the people and the leadership. We just need to convene, because I think we have, again, as all the companies Rock mentioned, doing great things from Shine to Exact to Epic. We have everything lined up, but we still have to tell our story a little bit better so that we can continue to get, and I'll close on this, Livability Magazine ranked us the #1 region 2 years in a row. CBS had us ranked as number 15. So we have it. We got it going on, but we have to continue to tell the story to reinforce that, particularly with our elected officials and with the international community. And I think we're getting there. Hope that answered your question, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. So Sarah, you've been with Exact for about 10 years. Maybe we can drill into, a little bit more specifics about access to talent and over that time in particular. Do you have any, specific stories or specific elements that you can convey about how, Exact's growth, Epic, GE, various others, has really been able to attract or provide access to talent, and specific to Exact would be wonderful.
Sure. Well, an early story from early days, and trying to call people that didn't know about Wisconsin or didn't really know where it was on a map. And when you say, would you like to come to Madison for an interview? And they say, is that more than a cornfield and an airport? To where we are now, where people still might be surprised when they come to the region, but really know much more about Wisconsin and specifically this area. It has taken a lot of effort in building brand. And I think I always felt like once people saw it and could spend some time here, that's when you could tell the story and people experienced it. It was tough for us to find ways to give people that experience without them already leaning in to say they're willing to try it and consider it. And, in recruiting biotech talent in early days, we're calling people on the coast, and sometimes in December, January, and February to say, do you want to come to Wisconsin to interview for this really exciting role? And sometimes it was less attractive. I think breaking through that barrier is focusing much more on the overall proposition of the job, the company, the mission and the vision of what we're working toward, and the impact that all of these companies collectively can have. And then it's about belonging in this space. Is this a place I want to move my family? Is this a place my spouse can find employment? Is this a place we're going to still be able to feel connected to, to our networks that might be not necessarily in this region? So we took a very tactical approach and learned along the way, and really tried to get people to come and see. And then that builds that brand awareness and hopefully the word of mouth that helps put our companies on the map.
Hey, Jonathan, can I just piggyback a little bit off of what Sarah just said? Because I think it was
Absolutely.
a great example of what I think we need to do. We're all from the Midwest, so we have this thing where we don't like to brag about how good we are. And I get that, right? I get that from a humble point of view. We should have that. But if we're competitive, and I'm very competitive, then we need to follow that model of what Sarah said and let people know this is what we are, this is who we are, this is what we do, and we're good at it, right? Because when we tell that story and when we do it more, we get to a point where now people are really starting to see us for more than just beer, cheese, and cornfields, right? So, which, look, that's not bad, but we're more than that. And so I think we have to have, and this is where MadRep partners with Exacts and you all, when we tell that story, not just nationally, but internationally, then we change the brand and the perception. And so kudos to Exact for doing just that, Sarah.
There's a really interesting thing that I've come to witness and see. Before I had joined HealthX, I was a chief innovation officer for an organization, a nonprofit called Chime. And that is an association of all the hospital CIOs and chief digital officers, globally. And what I came to realize is that so many of them knew Madison because of Epic. So Epic is the EHR software for the majority of health systems throughout the US. A major player. They've got, Gary Frings, former CIO, was just telling me last night just about, Exact's growth, but also with Epic. But like the number of people that are at Epic, I think it's about over 12,000 now, and 11,000 in Madison. But I've traveled around, and everybody that's in healthcare IT or digital health knows Madison because of Epic. Another example, I was at Cedars-Sinai in LA on Tuesday mentoring companies at their accelerator, and all of the executives there, the CIO, the CMIO, and others, have been to Madison, know Madison, have some other connection either to the university or have lived here. And it's fascinating to see that connection to our region. So it really has had a very significant impact. So I'd like to ask each of you, and starting off with Rock, put yourself back in January of 2020 and think about the change that COVID had catalyzed. How that has made an impact on Wisconsin, how that's made an impact on talent and access, and just think about from January 2020 to now, how that has had impact on our region.
I mean, the first thing it did is it made people go home. So, but they didn't. They still had a salary and they still had work to do. So it basically turned everybody into a consultant. And so everyone then, if they were going to work effectively, had to be task driven and had to have responsibilities. So it had to make people a lot more responsible. Now clearly, few people had to go and work and had to go into factories and assembly and so on. And that's the fundamental crisis of the supply chain. Lots of people weren't able to do that for long periods of time. And so COVID did drive both at that time and still today some big issues, because if you're not making supply, it takes many months and even years to catch up from demand. And so that's still having a profound impact, I think. And of course, people discovered a work-life balance that was different, right? So they didn't have to commute. I mean, not everybody who works in Madison or Milwaukee live there. They commute, and lots of people are commuting half an hour, and suddenly you got an hour or 2 hours of things you could do either at home or even work a little bit more, depending upon the work-life balance. So we saw employees that were working a lot more simply because they didn't have to commute. But you know what? We saw a lot of people that could readjust their life and maybe do a little more exercise, spend more time with the kids. And I think that also helped the companies. And of course, we have to get our way out of it now. We still have supply chain issues. I mean, I fundamentally believe that we really don't have inflation. We have shortages. So that is causing price hikes. And a war doesn't help as well to cause fuel prices, but that is coming down. But still, I think fundamentally we do not have a hot economy. And the other interesting thing I think about COVID is that it made demand for housing, because people were spending more time in housing, so they wanted nicer houses and they wanted this fixed. They could see the things that were a problem with their house. They wanted that fixed. So it didn't cause inflation, because of in a very spotty way. But I kind of disagree with the Fed. I don't think we have a hot economy problem. We have the residual of a COVID problem and a war problem, rather than. I don't want to talk about macroeconomics, but I think it's impacting everybody. So I think I thought I would give my opinion there.
Appreciate it, Rock. So Sarah, and then Jason, maybe you can specifically talk about what you think COVID catalyzed that wasn't possible beforehand, and just your general thoughts about what has changed and the opportunities post COVID.
Yeah, I think that the catalyzed aspects are all for us. We're all around leveraging technology, the digital channels, how you reach and connect with people and maintain that connection internally and externally. That's our connection with current talent, future talent, people who are within the company and that we wanted to retain during that time. And then the heavy leverage on using communication digitally so that we could stay connected to each other, which we were not a big Zoom and teleconference company prior to COVID. And obviously, like many, had to lean into that quite a bit. The residual aspect of that is also, some of the pros of that also become cons, because it's created this interesting dynamic of fairness and this perception of, well, I had to come in all through the pandemic. We have laboratory quality supply chain, essential workforce that was coming in throughout, that there's a perceived benefit for our customer service or other teams who could work from home. And now balancing the benefits that we have as an employer, the access to resources that you get when you're on site versus when you're working from home, those are all creating interesting, what could be perceived as kind of fairness challenges within the workforce. And then also things that we leverage when attracting candidates, again, to the space. We definitely slowed down in the number of relocations we had, although we kept hiring throughout. Relocation was something people were saying at that time, then maybe I'll move to Wisconsin. But during the pandemic, it was too hard to predict if that was something that was really feasible for people. So I think we slowed in bringing and attracting more people to this area specifically during that time.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Jason, your thoughts?
I agree with everything Rock and Sarah said. I mean, I think when you look at particularly the supply chain, no one saw that coming, where we went from a system that typically disincentives you from, not having stocks, not having your shelf stock. Now we were in essence being penalized for it. And that was across the board, every industry. And so, Rock, you got me thinking I could probably listen to you all day, because now I'm curious about whether we're in inflation or whether it's the supply chain issue. So I'm going to take you to lunch because I like that. But I do think COVID-19 exposed all of our weaknesses. It forced us to really look across the board, from how we do business to how are we going to attract and retain talent. How do we treat the talent that we have now? And so I think what it forced us to do was really look at it. It was a big come to Jesus meeting, right? I mean, you either got out of shape or you got in better shape, right? So you did one of the two. And so I think when we were exposed by that was the issue. One of the things that we did at MadRep, and this was a little bit before my tenure, is we did a report that was done in, I want to say in 2020. And then what we found out is that we lost around 16% of our farms, which was averaging almost 2 farms a day. And so now we're wondering, or we're waiting to see after the agricultural census is done again, will those numbers be bleak, or what will happen? But to Sarah's and Rock's point, the supply chain issue, none of us saw that coming. And I think we're still dealing with it in all industries and in a number of factors, from workforce to where are we getting these bodies from? How are we going to train this talent? We don't have enough talent as it is. So where are we going to pool all these people? Now you have the banking industry competing with the hospitality industry. And so the hospitality industry is suffering. So it made us really have to ask the question, what the hell are we going to do next, right? Because if we want to continue to compete, we better figure out how we need to address these issues.
I think that's a really great point, Jason. Something else that we saw was that the talent that we targeted wasn't necessarily people from healthcare anymore,
Yeah.
right? So for a better, we could look across industries, and people were willing to move across industries. And also for the worse, people were willing to leave for that
Right.
job at Amazon or that other thing, that being part of this healthcare and this really strong mission maybe wasn't as important as where I worked and where I was able to spend my time.
So piggybacking on that, Jason, what opportunities do we have in Wisconsin to really continue the growth story?
I think number one, it starts with an attitude, right? I think you have, and this is for the leaders in our communities. You have to decide that you want to compete, and whatever we're going to do what's necessary. So number one, that means we have to have a powwow or parlay. My wife says I shouldn't say powwow, but we have to have a parlay where we get together and determine what's the strategy, where are we going, and how do we play into that. And so when you look at areas like broadband, diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we can start tapping into underrepresented, under-targeted talent and attract those to our areas. For example, I was talking with my good friend, Zach Brandon, and we were talking about this. And he said, Jason, we know the pitch to the guys at Stanford and Harvard, but what's the pitch to the guy that goes to Morehouse or a historically Black college or university? What's the pitch to international individuals coming from Ukraine? Should we be looking at that? Is there opportunity? So I think number one, you have to have a mindset that you want to compete and you'll be willing to do what it takes, even meaning looking at developing different relationships. I was in the state capitol with some representatives and they wanted to talk about exploring a relationship with countries in Africa, untapped market. And so what I've always said is, if you give me people, right? Because I'm a firm believer that everything starts with people. If you give me people who are passionate, want to be successful, we can teach them all the technical stuff. But we have to get that drive and find that kind of talent. And when we get that, then we're off to the races. So I think the opportunities are, if we can address our broadband issues, address how do we attract talent, we'll continue to do, we'll see our area grow consistently.
One of the negative effects that we live in this beautiful place in the summertime, but it turns into snow and ice in the wintertime, and people assume that
hard to get a lot of Black people here, Rock.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It's hard to get a lot of folks here, especially if they live in the South in general or California. But they will come, because if they want a great place to live and raise kids, they will. If they come, they will discover it. So Madison's full of people who have moved and discovered that it's actually a great place to live. But one of the opportunities I think that COVID has also said is that we don't necessarily have to have people live here to work here, and I think we need to exploit that. And if we want to bring people here, let's bring them in nicer parts of the year rather than in the depths of January, February. But in all seriousness, I think one of the fundamental things that we have to do generally is to just get talent. And one of the things that's distressing to me as a professor is that we often have great people, graduate students and postdocs that come here from all over the world, and then it's so hard for them to stay. They ended up going to Australia and Canada and New Zealand and Europe to work because they're really not welcomed very, very easily here. So we need to, and you know what? There's great universities in South Africa. I've been to them. They have tremendous talent. There's the University of West Indies, by the way, has tremendous talent in 3 campuses in the West Indies, and we need to really start to get talent to come here, increase diversity. And diversity of all types, right? Diversity of attitude and diversity of opinions as well. And I think this is the kind of place that would welcome them.
Thank you, Rock. Sarah, kind of specifically going into folks from underrepresented populations, can you talk about at least your perspective on moving the needle in attracting folks to the region, to Madison, in particular in biotech and health IT space?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off by saying there's work to be done and it requires focus. And I would not say we're an example of doing everything right and being able to really move that needle. We've put tremendous focus on preparing for the skills that we need for our company and across all levels of educational background and technical talent, as well as in our laboratories. And we've had great success in working with the Urban League and building kind of training academies for those frontline roles to move into healthcare customer service and billing and our laboratory roles, which then feed that pipeline of talent for us to continue to invest and develop to build the career pathways. And then in attracting people, of underrepresented or minorities, that is the thing where, again, location really matters. And the question people ask, and you have to be able to give that experiential feedback that's right for them, is, do I belong here? Can I feel like I will belong? And really figuring that out. And we've, put a lot in that interview process that when someone's a candidate and have interest, to be sure that we're not only saying here's what the job is, but the community, the resources, the finding out what's important to individuals, to say, how do we pair you up with another family that went through the same thing, and we can talk through what that was like, and meet children when you're here for a visit, bring the spouse or partner along with you. But it takes a lot of focus and effort, and there's not a lot of statistics someone can read to say, oh yeah, this is a great place to live, because we're not doing that well in that area. So I'm interested in others' ideas on what else we could be doing, especially as we parlay together.
Jason, Rock, your further thoughts?
No, I agree, and I think one, Rock did mention the remote working, and so I do think that's an untapped, and we haven't exploited that. I think to the degree, and this is coming from Milwaukee to a region here, and I'll say this: one of the good things about this is when you do come, there are places where you see Pastor Alex G, Dr. Alex G, you see Colleen Kair, you see communities and people willing to do exactly, Sarah, what you're talking about, and with the help of Exact Sciences, and you see the partnership. Yeah, no, we're not there, but I do think, part of the job or role of me is really telling that story to diverse communities. And I remember telling my wife, listen, this is a great place. And surprisingly, it's more diverse than you realize until you get here. And when I say diverse, I mean from diverse of thought to culture. It really is more diverse than what we're known for. What I like, though, is that you have people committed to really telling that story. And so I think to the degree that we can continue to tell that story, and as Rock said and Sarah said, when we get folks here, show them, then that makes a dent in it. No place will ever be perfect, I don't believe, but I do think it starts with the awareness and the fact that we have individuals in a community willing to get involved in making that happen. So I think we're doing what we can. I think we'll get better, but I am, coming from, quite honestly, one of the most segregated places in the country to Madison, it's a couple of steps up. So I will say that.
Yeah, one of the interesting facts is that 30% of the entrepreneurs in this country are immigrants. And the probability of a person born in the U.S. being an entrepreneur is about on the order of 1 in 10, whereas the probability of an immigrant becoming an entrepreneur is 3 times higher. And so, the interesting thing is why, and you have to say, well, why? Well, why is that? And I think it's because actually entrepreneurship is often driven by need, and lots of folks coming outside the country just have more need, and they frankly had to hustle a little more. And then when they come here, they can see a very fertile ground. And of course, some of them are bringing tremendous talents too, and those types, the ones that are, say, getting advanced degrees, I think probably are overrepresented as well. If we can get them to stay, if we can get the federal government, and we can get the attitudes, I think, of state governments, such that folks who are willing to come to this country have a place in the country, and that people will realize that they are adding materially to the well-being of the country rather than take a fear of taking away their jobs.
Mm-hmm. So, Rock, on that same topic of entrepreneurs, starting companies, new ventures, can you compare the climate today to when you started and founded Tomotherapy? And is it easier, harder, to start a company, a healthcare company in Madison?
Yeah, I mean, my first companies were out of the University of Wisconsin spinoffs, and frankly, the first one, it was hostile. They didn't want me to start a company, or at least my chairman didn't want me to start a company. He was actively hostile. And then the next company, only 5 years later, it was benign neglect, right? So that's fine. You can start a company. Just bye-bye. don't bother us anymore about that company. And then lately, in the last 20 years, it's been much improved at the university. So now we really do have a culture that encourage people to be entrepreneurs. We have, we active. In fact, one of the department that I left, the Department of Medical Physics, actually has a postdoc entrepreneurship program where they're going to hire people who are come here as postdocs, and their goal isn't to write papers and get grants. Their goal is to start a company. And we need more of that. We need more departments, colleges that are willing to start entrepreneurial postdoc programs, because that'll really drive the economy if you get some extremely talented people that understand technology. And you could also imagine, what an opportunity we would have. I estimate that it's 11,000, 12,000 Epic employees. We have maybe up to 1,000 leaving Epic every year. Mm-hmm. And many of them are going to the healthcare systems that they helped start up, right? And they become IT employees there. But we can keep some of that talent here and tap into that. Imagine the number of startup companies we'd get if we have hundreds of people that are coming through every year, the economy, and slipping out. If we could keep them here starting companies. I think some of the best ones, like Redox, that I know that HealthX has funded, were exactly, 2 Epic employees coming out and wanting to figure out what they could do in this economy.
Exactly, Rock. That it has that impact. The company, at least specific to Epic, the level of training, and especially on like project management and the rigor that talented folks that come to Madison for Epic, they go through, that has a major impact. I mean, we look to help our portfolio companies find talent, and many of the folks that have worked at Epic are phenomenal additions to those teams. Sarah, I would imagine that in the last 10 years, you've probably seen some of your team members leave and either start companies or do other entrepreneurial endeavors or join startup companies. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've experienced, what you've seen, and kind of the change, at least in that window of time, for creating companies in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think it's good recycling, right? It's bringing talent that grows in a company. I mean, we're 7,000 employees now. We do see people leave for smaller companies because I just want to be in a smaller company. I want to do something where I know every employee's name and they can sit around a table. That's great. There's many opportunities for that. And we love, obviously, when people stay in the area, because sometimes they'll come back, and we have the boomerang effect happening too. And people can bring those skills across the industry and across the companies that we have. So I just echo what you said, Jonathan. It's certainly something we've observed. And I think it's healthy for the area for those types of opportunities to be available. And you can translate those skills to help better the overall region.
Great. Jason, any further thoughts on that?
I think we're moving in the right direction. I think to some people that's a subjective question. Has it gotten better? When you look at the level of funding to women and people of color, we still have room to go. That said, there has been more of that. If you compare where we were, Madison, compared to the East and West Coast, we're doing a lot better. So I do think we're doing a lot better. And, I think that the sun, moon, and stars are lining up. but there's still some areas where we need to continue to grow, to develop and foster talent here, as well as attract talent, particularly in the realms of access to capital, venture capital, funding, women, BIPOC community businesses. And then to a certain degree, Jonathan, some of this, and we haven't touched on it yet, we have to talk about the relationship between education and our business community. I mean, because what we're seeing is more businesses, larger businesses, are starting their own sort of educational kind of programs because their needs are not being met. And so somewhere we have to have that discussion so that we can continue to fill that pipeline of talent and innovation. But the optimistic person in me says, yes, it's getting better, but that's because I choose to believe and accept and play a part of that. So,
Great. Thank you. So reminder to all the folks that are listening, feel free to put your questions into the comment section. And Jason, I feel like this is a perfect question for you, having been an elected official. So, yeah, I know. It's a good one. and I'm going to ask Rock right afterwards, given his his comment about diversity of thought. But is the present political climate in Wisconsin proving a challenge in recruiting talent and developing startup companies?
Oh, man, come on, Jonathan. I'll say this, right? There's two parts to that. From a competitor point of view, when I look at the funding that's hit states, ARPA dollars, there are sort of two schools of thoughts on this economic development. One is when you look at what North Carolina and Boston is doing, they're going, hey, biotech, biosciences, we're going to make an aggressive push there. Great. I think here we have a culture where, yes, we want to help wellness and empower individuals. Nothing wrong with that. Personally, I think we're a little overweighted in that, because my question is, as a former just stockbroker and business person, what's the return on that investment? Meaning this, if you say I'll give $100,000 to a restaurant or two restaurant owners, I'm not knocking that. That's fine. But look at it from my point of view, which, as a person of color, as a person that thinks we should be empowering people for future jobs, as a legislator, as a businessman, to ask the question, what's the return on that investment? I would say I'll use that 100 and invest into a biotech firm, creates an apprenticeship program where kids can start filling that pipeline. And when you start comparing that, the return on the investment, the taxes, the indirect and direct jobs, when you start looking at the multipliers, that's a better investment. I'm not knocking that investment, but I do believe we have to get out of this, delegating or regulating, particularly people of color, to construction jobs, hospitality jobs. Nothing wrong with that. But what the pandemic has shown us, those are the first jobs to go. And if we're not developing systems or ecosystems that will empower people to build wealth and contribute to the growth of the region, then what's the strategy? So when you say, is there a, when you ask that question, again, nothing wrong with that. But if it were me, I would be looking to do a little bit more in the biosciences, tech, and playing off our assets and getting more people of color into those arenas so we can continue to thrive for the long haul.
Yeah, no, I think those are excellent points. Really, I think we need to have politicians that solve problems, that solve real problems. When you have a candidate for governor saying that he's going to turn Madison upside down, I mean, what does that actually mean? Is he going to turn the Capitol upside down? Is he going to turn the city upside down? I mean, Madison is the hub of growth for the state. and a business here. I mean, I remember tomotherapy. We did an analysis of where we got parts from, and you know what county we got most of our parts from? Waukesha County, and that was a Madison company. So clearly, what we need to do is we need to have politicians that say we got to stop the culture wars. We have to come and solve problems, because let's face it, the biggest problem that rural Wisconsin has is economic. And Madison can help that. And it can help that by being the center, the nucleus of economic development that will have an impact throughout the state. The economic idea, or the Wisconsin idea, is something that's real. It's not just the university, but it's centered in the state capital. And you wouldn't have a Texan saying, we're going to turn Austin upside down, right? It's the capital, but it's also the economic engine. It's got the most venture capital in Texas are in Austin, not in Houston, not in Dallas, but in Austin. And that's the same with Madison. The most investors here, venture capitalists, are here, not in Milwaukee, not in Green Bay. And so what we really have to do is get politicians to say, let's be more like Madison. Let's try to get the effect of the capital out to the entire state and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rock. Thank you, Jason. Sarah, any further thoughts on political climate and creating companies?
Again, it's going back to, where do I belong? Where can I find people who think like me, who appreciate me for what I believe? And as an employer, creating the opportunity for those types of conversations to happen in a healthy and productive way, but also not letting, I often don't get kind of questions about the politics of the state as we're recruiting talent, but I think people do their research on those things before they're even getting to considering the opportunity.
Johnny, can I add one more? And it's to Rock's point. When I travel and I go around and I compare, and I had a conversation with our previous chancellor, and there's times where when you look in the legislature, it's almost a perpetual, visceral attitude to the growth engine of this state. And you often hear it perpetuated, the Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay. And I've always said to people, your politics are your politics. But where we should be uniting is that if we want to get together and be competitive, who cares about whether you're Democrat or Republican? That has nothing to do with making this region right. And so to Rock's point, I've never seen other elected officials in other states downgrade their own areas, even if they weren't representatives in those areas, because it doesn't perpetuate a competitive attitude. And so now we have this culture where it's almost a us versus them. And that's not leadership. That's pandering to people to get a vote. And those are the worst kinds of elected officials, whether Democrat or Republican, because it shows that you don't give a damn about where we go as a community. You only care about getting in position. And that's just that. I've never seen that work well. And so thank you, Rock, for bringing that up, because we have work to do. I've always said this, and I'll shut up. When the lights go out, man, it doesn't matter. So we have to get to a point where it's not us versus them. As a state, as a city, where are we going to go? And that takes all of us. And it shouldn't be perpetuated by elected officials to kowtow to get some votes. I've never agreed with that. I think it's stupid. And it doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, no, I want to add one more thing that I think would be a nucleating idea for all politicians here, and that is in 2019, the Brookings Institute looked at 50 cities in the country that would be the next economic engine, and Madison was overwhelmingly number one. And so, if our state politicians could say, "Let's get behind this idea." And let's try to enhance that. Let's try to spread it. Let's try to make this even a bigger program. In fact, number 2 was Minneapolis-St. Paul. So there's a huge opportunity for this axis of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Madison to really have a federal presence to try to get some money to really crank this economic engine up, even between the two states. And we share students between the two states, right? So this should almost be natural.
Mm-hmm. So, Rock, I think there's an interesting, connect point there. Madison, and then the Twin Cities. We're both cold climates. We've talked about the cold as being something that maybe isn't as attracting, but we've got great summers and a lot of outdoor activities. And Michael from the Cap Times has made a couple comments there about it. But I mean, we really do have 4 distinct seasons, and that I think is an attractant. And to be able to do things throughout the year that are unique seasons. So maybe let's chat a little bit about that. We've got about 4 minutes left, and then I'll have a closing question for you. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, if you love the 4 seasons, this is it. And I guess we have an overrepresented of people that do have the 4 seasons. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, so I moved down here because it's warm.
I think it's great, man. I think when we're responding to international companies, we actually do sell that as one of our strengths, that we do have 4 seasons. And believe it or not, our incoming vice chair, Peter Tan, VP of Strang, loves the winter. And so I'm working on a bike trail now with Sauk City and snowmobiling. So it is a strength for us. We play around a lot, but it is a huge strength to have those 4 seasons, because there's always something to do, even in those 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Sarah, your thoughts?
Well, I think we have employees all over. We just the last 3 days, we brought in all of our senior leaders. So we had 400 people from across the world in Madison. And as an employer, we love to show it off. And this is where our headquarters is. So it's an opportunity for us to bring people. We don't do that in the winter, just because I know we deal with a lot of other travel issues potentially too, not even because it's cold here. I'd love to show people what you can do in the cold. But it is an attractive feature for employers to build that presence and then to use this as a showcase for their talent. And then I'm a part of a company who does this. We had a concert at Breeze Stevens Field, so got to see a part of downtown that isn't where our offices are, but it's part of the community and part of the thriving aspects of Madison too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the 4 seasons: active outdoorsmen, snowmobiling, all of that, and I think it's a huge asset for Wisconsin. So we've got a couple minutes left. I'm going to ask a closing question and appreciate your participation. So start off with Rock, and then go to Sarah, and then Jason. If there's one thing you could do to catalyze Wisconsin's healthcare, so biotech, digital health, the economy further, what would it be and why?
Yeah, no, I mean, I maybe I'll repeat a few things. I mean, I think the Brookings Institute report should be a catalyst. Unfortunately, COVID sort of interrupted the impact of that. People were starting to talk about how we could catalyze around that and try to get some regional and federal money. I think it's possible with the CHIPS Act to do just that. And clearly, I think one of the great assets that we have is the University of Wisconsin. They need to be involved. All of the great community organizations that Jason represents one, and of course the companies, especially the larger companies. And I think the attitude of the larger companies are that if this economy grows, it's only going to help them as well, because access to talent is going to be improved by having excellent employees in all companies, not just in their companies, because people do move around. And as Sarah said, there's a boomerang effect. You often have excellent employees try something else, but come back. So the thing is, let's find a way to keep the talent. Let's get some federal money in here so that we can, for example, have matched federal funds to venture capitalists. If we could get more venture capital firms from the Boston and San Francisco, Silicon Valley areas to have offices here, I think they would see that there's a bargain in startup companies that they don't find on the coasts.
I agree with you completely, Rock. And we've co-invested with over 100 venture funds and helping to attract that capital here to Wisconsin. Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah, really quick investment, as you just mentioned. And my biggest takeaway from this conversation, I think a lot of Jason's point, is better collaboration. The collaboration among the institutions, the businesses, the government. I think we really have to get on the same page, because we can all be working on our top 3 priorities and be going in 50 different directions. And there's so much benefit to being focused and finding those shared common goals that we can be working on together.
Great. Thank you. Jason, my friend, the last word.
I agree with everything Sarah and Rock said. I think for me, I think it would be to have a strategy from, and again, this is just because I was a former legislator in politics, but to have a strategy from leadership or leaders on where we want to go, so that when opportunities like the CHIPS Act comes, or Build Back Better, so we have a roadmap of, this is where we want to go. And so either they're not getting in the way or they're supporting the initiatives that Sarah, Rock, and I are doing, because it ultimately comes back to that. So if it were me, it would be, hey, let's get our congressional congressman, senator, what's the vision of where we want to go based on our strengths, so that when the CHIPS Act, things of that nature come, when innovation comes, we don't have this huge bureaucracy that people like Rock had to deal with, so that we have people from Exact who I call when innovative things happen, so that it's just an easier pathway. Rock mentioned it. I mean, the Brookings report had us #1. The research has been done. We just need the political will to say, hey, it's already done. They said this is what we can be. Let's be that. Let's go after it. And let's put the resources behind those people who know how to get us there.
Mm-hmm. Jason, Sarah, Rock, thank you very much for being on the panel and having the conversation about Wisconsin Health Catalyzed. Thank you to everyone that joined us, and have a wonderful day and be well.
Thank you, Jonathan.